Hello and welcome. My name is Kevin. This is Do It for Bruce. We're here in CK3 once more. This time we're getting a baseline from the 867 start date. We've already done this once before with the 1066, and we have a nice little video if you'd like to see that. So we're going to do something similar with this one, run it 3 different times to see what happens, what similarities we see, who the winners are, what new information we can glean from these time lapses. So let's begin with some predictions. First prediction will probably be that we will see the Muslims be a little more effective than they are compared to their 1066 start date brethren. Second one will be that we see a lot more border gore comparatively. This one will be an easy one. My guess is that Arabic will be probably one of the top languages spoken amongst all the different courts. So with that, we will see you after this first time lapse. So see you in a bit. Here we are after our first time lapse, so lots to talk about, lots to look at, but first we're going to dial in what 4 metrics we're looking at. The top 5 in each one of these categories: who's the best grandeur, who's got the biggest military, who of the faiths is the strongest, and finally what court languages is being used the most. Imagine the religion and the court language kind of tie in a little bit together, but we shall see. So first and foremost, we have pretty big mega states here in this. So we have an Empire of Brittany, we have an Andalusian kingdom, we have a kingdom of Aquitaine, we have the Arabian Empire, yes. We have a Mongolian Empire that somehow still is standing. Usually that's not true. They've fallen off by this time or fractured into some sort of terrible ugly mess. Are doing the best comparatively, the Catholics the most land, and then Ashuri, and then Tengri for some reason, and then a Hindu faith, and then Orthodox. Let us look next at military strength. See who of these is the strongest, and it looks like we have obviously the Arabian Empire first, then we have the Andalusians. My guess is #1 in the world for the royal court is probably going to be the Arabian boys, yes, Arabia, and then it is a Hindu. Surprisingly, it feels like there's like big 5 is Aquitaine, France, Lithuania, Bavaria, Bohemia are like the biggest, baddest kingdoms, empires, or all kingdoms in this region. And see, like I said, I wish they had a culture map mode where it said what culture group was the most doing the best, but we can only just eyeball and assume. It looks like Masharik is doing pretty good, this Butcher. And finally, let's look at court languages, and it looks like, again, we can eyeball and just see how landmass wise it looks like this Mali language is surprisingly popular, and there's Chadic, and after that it might be High German, and then maybe three-way tie between these 3 or those 4. So that was the first. See you after the next one. Looks like we are starting to see somewhat of a pattern here, with the Arabian Empire being a powerhouse and the Mongols actually sticking around a lot more. Personally, I like to have powerful states in the game because it makes it a lot more interesting to pay attention to see how well the AI is reacting and evolving in all these situations. So let's start off with religion. Still only the Ashuri top one, but compared to the Catholicism Orthodox, they are still covering a lot more landmass. Tangrism still hanging in there, and Mulwaliism. Look quickly at culture. We got lots of similar culture. It's just Andalusian. Not a lot of crazy ones that I can tell about. Looks like a divergence of Greek is happening over here. Masharik, Butri, Moroccan actually popped out, which is interesting. I don't think I've ever seen a Moroccan. It's a cool confluence of things going on. Afghan, a lot more diversity. Yep, looks like a Champagne is splitting up France over there. Arabian still pretty much the same. We have a Skane taking over northern Germany. We have this mighty empire in the east, the Bengal Empire, probably rivaling the Arabian Empire. Yeah, Arabian's number 2, and then it looks like the Hispaniola Umayyad out. Looks like a shutout from the Muslim faith when it comes to military strength. Guhara, so a lot of Indian representation. Another one there, and then finally the King of Lithuania as number 5. Arabic is once again topping the charts, kicking butt, taking names, telling everybody that they are the dominant language and that you should definitely start speaking it at court. Then after that, it looks like either High German or Iberian Vulgar or Italian Vulgar. As soon as the Carlings don't own those titles anymore, they switched from being West Francia, East Francia to Germany and France, which is a nice little addition. I like that you don't see a West Francia all the time. Also, a Kingdom of Austria being formed by decision. That's pretty cool. For now, that's where we're stopping with this one, and I will see you in our last and final one. Here we are after our last time lapse. Okay, we have a big Hispania. We have a kind of torn apart Arabian Empire, and we look like the Mongols aren't doing as well. But we still have that north-south split for France. Let us begin, like we always do, with our religion. And it looks like Ashurism is doing its best and it's taking the top spot, but then 3 after that are all Christian faiths, and finally another Muslim faith. A lot more things going on. Again, I think, is this a, yes, this is an Adamite, Adamite faith. Keeps happening every single time. Just lovely stuff there. Just lovely stuff. There was the Emperor of Hispania, probably another Adamite. Wow. 2 Adamites. Lafid is the first, which is the Persian Empire, and then it's the Arabian Empire, right? Yes. The Arabian Empire after him. What I did see and I thought was kind of funny was the Crete kingdom that spans the rest of the world. It's got a weird part of the land. It looks like it was spawned from the petty kingdom of Lancaster. Denmark, we got Finland. Look at this dude's face. The ugly trait on the homely trait is I wouldn't define that dude as ugly. I would mostly define his face as goofy. Let's get back on track by looking at court languages. Like Arabic, still pretty powerful, but we're seeing them get a run for their money with Iranian. Greek, other language, Manding. Do a comparison graph like we did last time. of all the different stats and see who of all the different faiths how well they're doing, and then compare it to the 1066 graph that I created before. So stay tuned for that right now. Here we are again with some graph talk. Like last time, we ordered all the 1 through 5. We gave them a weighted score of 5 through 1. So if you scored first, you got 5 points, second 4 points, and so on and so forth. So pretty standard stuff. We have one more faith compared to last time, so we will click on through and see which in these 3 categories who has done the best. So Jane had a little bit of a podium finish of the top 5 with some military strength, and then Tangrism had a little more, it looks like just a slight bit more, 2-3 points. Then Buddhists had some grandeur as well as the number of counties showing up. Hindu after that, a little bit more well-rounded in all 3 categories, at least having some points. We'll go Christians after that, who seem to be dominant in the number of counties that they took, as well as grandeur and some military strength. But I think the winner and most powerful faith starting out in 867 is clearly going to be the Muslims. They have hands down the most military strength, the most grandeur, and pretty high up there when it comes to the number of counties being represented. So from the 867 start date, the number 1 faith is Muslim. That's not that surprising. What is surprising is now comparing the two 867 and 1066. So on our left over here we have 1066, and on our right we have 867. Go through and see how these faiths all compare to each other. So first and foremost, it looks like Tangrism is about the same. They scored a little bit more in 867, but still not doing as well comparatively. And then Buddhism, we'll see, looks like Buddhists overall are not doing as well as the 1067 Buddhists are doing much more, a little bit more well-rounded, getting points in each category compared to this one where they're mostly still just doing grandeur and number of counties. Looks like the Hindus have been much reduced compared to their 1067 brethren. That might be just they aren't able to have as many kingdoms as they normally do or they don't have as many kingdoms as they do in the 1066 start date. I'm unsure of why that is per se, but it looks like they are either just getting taken out by the Muslims, which is probably happening, or some other factor that I'm not seeing here. The Muslims are doing much better from the 867 start date. I think that has a little to do with they have a lot more kingdoms. There's just like a lot more Muslim representation across the board, it feels like. Christians are more dominant in the 1066. They're still pretty good overall, but not as good as their 1066 brethren. And I think that's again comes down to them having more kingdoms in the 1066 start date. So altogether, it looks like Muslims are way more dominant 867 start date, and the other faiths, when comparatively aren't as dominant. But in 1066, all the other faiths are doing much better overall, like to the detriment of the Muslims. Hopefully this shines a light on more interesting aspects of this game. I think it's really neat to do this kind of stuff. Obviously, if you enjoy this, don't hesitate to like, comment, subscribe, and as always, have a good rest of your day.